Now, while much of the world's attention remains focused on events in Gaza, other Arab countries such as Syria, Iraq and Libya are being torn apart. Well, I'm joined by Arash Aramesh, National Security Analyst at California's Stanford University. Nice to see you there, Arash. Was it inevitable, do you think, that Libya would descend into this kind of chaotic faction fighting that we're seeing?
Not necessarily, no. You can see that in every country you mentioned earlier, there is a vacuum of power, there's a vacuum of leadership. Unfortunately, the European Union and the United States, the West, are not leading. They were supposed to lead. For years now, Europe has sort of kissed goodbye its role as a powerful mediator in global affairs. There is this clear isolationist move across European capitals from the left to the right. After 8 years of President Bush trying to do too much, too fast, and at times at a very high cost, you see that isolationist move here in the United States as well. This administration, the administration of President Obama, has tried not to do much, not to do anything as a matter of fact. For instance, they got involved in Libya by providing air support to get rid of the former dictator Muammar Gaddafi, but they provided very little support on the ground to militias, groups, or the central government to fight off Islamist radical thugs. The same situation in Iraq. Look at what's happened to the government of Nouri al-Maliki. True, he was a very bad prime minister. True, he was beholden to Iran. And also true, he was pushing forth with such bad sectarian politics that alienated large chunks of Iraqi society. But without having any American military presence there, it really paved the way for ISIS, a radical, extremist, terrorist organization that makes al-Qaeda try not to want to be associated with them, take over half the country or a third of the country. Same thing with Syria. Many people can make the argument that early intervention in March of 2011, early 2012, when secular, somewhat democratic forces had the upper hand against the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, our support for them could have toppled the government, could have provided some support, some element of democratic or some sort of peaceful transition of power. Look at what's happened in Syria. Again, Islamists, radical Islamist thugs have the upper hand. And they usually get the upper hand without Western leadership and without leadership for liberal forces and democratic forces. Religious thugs, such as ISIS, such as Jabhat al-Nusra, usually gain the upper hand. They glorify death. And once you glorify death, you fight really well. And that's our winning card.
Briefly, Arash, what do you think has happened to those democratic goals? You just mentioned them there, of the Arab Spring.
Yeah, democratic forces make really bad fighters. If you believe in having a middle class, having a good economy, if you believe in expecting and accepting your enemies and tolerating them, you're usually not very good at breaking knuckles and breaking kneecaps and carrying out suicide missions. So that's the main disadvantage of democratic forces. Look to Egypt. In Egypt, it was the progressive forces that carried forward the revolution and toppled Hosni al-Mubarak. However, in the first election, because of the mosque network, because of the very deep penetration of religious forces in rural environments, in the more underdeveloped areas of the country, they managed to bring people to the polling stations. Usually also when radical Islamists win elections, such as in Iran, such as in Egypt, for instance, they try to do away with the very same democratic rights that brought them to power. I'm not justifying what General or Field Marshal President Sisi is doing in Egypt. Far from it. All I'm trying to say is without real leadership and without our responsibility as a superpower, being a superpower, with it comes a certain set of responsibilities. There will be a rise of radical Islamists, and this is not an isolated problem in the Mideast or North Africa alone. These guys have global ambitions.
Okay.
These guys have, and they will come back.
Okay, Arash Aramesh at Stanford University, thank you very much.